In this video I'm going to show you how to attach a one-piece collar. For this I've prepared the collar by interfacing one section and interfacing my facings. I've stitched my shoulder seams together on the body and I've run a 1 centimetre stay stitch around the neck and notched it to allow the seam to be sewn straight. You now need to cut up to the... I've also stitched a row of stay stitching or reinforced stitching around the interfaced neck edge on the collar. I'm now going to snip up to the markings, up to the stitching, and press that back in place for the back neck. I've then pinned the collar together and we're now going to sew the 3 sides of the collar, leaving the notched edge open. Stitch using the normal seam allowance. And I have a little tip for you when you get to the corner. Instead of making a very sharp corner, one stitch at a diagonal before turning for the rest. This will give you a nice sharp corner when you turn through. You now need to trim the seam allowance and cut across the corners of your collar. Press and turn through. Here you have the collar turned through and pressed. We're now going to attach the collar, pin the collar onto the body that we've already prepared. So place the body right side up with the collar under collar down and match the centre back notches. Now you're going to be sewing at the back neck, you're going to be sewing just the under collar to the garment. That's why we've folded this seam back, and that will be going all the way to the side seams, shoulder seams. So if you pin all collar, both pieces of the collar and the body together at the shoulder seam towards the front, matching your raw edges, and then the edge of the collar is to meet the front notch. Do the same from the other side. So when you stitch this on, you want to start with all 3 layers, so the body and both layers of the collar up to the shoulder seam, Then when you've turned the top seam back, you're just going through the under collar and the body, and then back onto all 3 layers again to the end. You'll want to stitch this just the other side of your stay stitching rows so they don't show at the end. Where you've notched the body neck edge, that allows you to straighten the body out as you're sewing the collar on. Now the collar is stitched all the way through, and from the back you shouldn't be able to see the stay stitch. If you do see it a little bit, that can easily be removed, or if this thread, if I was sewing it, I would sew in a matching thread and you wouldn't see that. You now see that the back neck has the opening, which we're going to tuck the raw edges up and stitch, and these sections will be tidied underneath the facing. Now we need to place the facings onto the garment. So you tuck the collar next to the body and sandwich it in between the body and the facing. Ensuring all the pieces underneath are in line, because you have a lot of layers together here. And sew the facing to the side seam. That can then be snipped at the corner, trimmed, and and turned through. Do the same to the other corner and then press. Now the collar has been pressed and the facing turned through, we're ready to just enclose the raw edge of the back neck into the collar. So I've pushed all of the raw edges up towards the collar and pinned the collar down in line with the stitch line. We're then just going to slip stitch the back neck up. If you just catch the thread of the stitching on the bodice and then just take a little slip stitch on the fold of the collar and continue along every second or third stitch. Bring it tight as you go along. And that is your finished collar.